Today on the Ask Brady Show, we talk about the 3 core building blocks of church messaging: hope, community, and purpose. Well, hey there, Pro Church Nation, and welcome to the Ask Brady Show, episode number 23. We've got 4 great questions from the people of Pro Church Nation, and I'm joined, as always, to my left, your right, it's Roxanne.
That's true.
True it is. Behind the camera, the editing wizard himself, Joe Nex. And finally, the man with the cam, Alex Mills.
Thanks. It's not really as special as it sounds because I work here, but I'm here.
All right, awesome. Well, we are going to jump right into the very first question. So, Roxanne, take it away.
So the first question comes from Owen, and he sent in a video.
Hey, Roxanne and Brady. First, Brady, let me do the good Canadian thing and apologize. I'm sorry that I question your sports trivia knowledge. I promise it won't happen again.
But then the Phoenix Coyotes exist. Phoenix Coyotes.
For my actual question, right now we're working through the Pro Church Academy course, the 11 Steps to Building a Better Website. And you say that there are 3 things that the church is uniquely positioned to provide: hope, community, and purpose. And you suggest building a headline based on one of those 3 things. As our staff was evaluating this, we felt like our church right now is best positioned to provide purpose. However, we feel like in our town, the greatest need is actually community. And we're taking steps towards building healthy community and being a support for that. But our question is, what would you actually target for your website headline? Would you target the greatest felt need, or would you target what you're positioned to provide right now? I'm looking forward to your answer. Thank you so much.
All right, Owen. Well, thanks for getting back to us and sending in another question. And I do accept your apology referring to when you question my sports knowledge, which should never be done, as we've all learned. And Owen had to learn the hard way. But like a true Canadian, an honorary Canadian, is he Canadian?
I have no idea.
Okay, whether he's a true Canadian or acting like a Canadian, stepping up and saying, sorry, eh? Appreciate that, Owen. Okay, so your question is very, very specific. And so I want to kind of like back up a bit and explain why we recommend, in the first place, churches focusing their messaging on one of 3 things: hope, purpose, or community. The reason is, if you've ever gone to a church's website and seen their mission statement, or you've seen a church's mission statement or vision statement in any other manner, they're all exactly the same. They're all helping people love Jesus, love people, and serve the world. Making disciples to serve the world. Loving others, loving God, helping serve the world. Whatever it might be, they're all the same. And there's a good reason for that. Almost every church's mission statement can be distilled down to the greatest commandment or the Great Commission. Love God, love others, make disciples. And it makes sense that every church's mission statement can be distilled down to those 2 things, because if it wasn't those 2 things, or any combination of those 2 things, what would it be? And so that's not the problem. The problem is that every church ends up having the exact same mission statement to the world and mission statement internally that really eventually means nothing. It's very corporate, very formal, and there's no narrative around that. And so it's very hard to kind of like come alongside it and believe in it and really like have people grasp and clasp onto the mission statement, because it's like, having a mission statement here at Pro Church, those that would be like, to expedite the practicalities and formalities of running a business to increase revenues while encouraging customer success and support. You'd be like, oh my gosh, I fell asleep just talking about that, and I was the one talking.
Yeah, I ignored you after the first word.
That's a good call. So, that's a good call. Yeah, I won't. And so, the reason that we say churches talk about either hope, purpose, or community is because these are 3 things that every single one of us is longing for and looking for in life, and 3 things that the church is uniquely positioned to help with. Churches are uniquely positioned to help offer hope in Jesus; purpose, a life found centered upon Jesus; and community, Christ-centered community. All things that churches are uniquely positioned to help with that most organizations are not. And so that's why it's good to focus on something that you as a church can uniquely help others with. Yes, every church can do this, but when you focus on one of purpose hope, or community, it allows you to build a narrative and create something that actually has meaning and is not just formal and corporate. So for instance, my church's mission statement is inviting people into a life that matters. And while I wish this was a bit more you-focused rather than me-focused, it is still saying this is what we do rather than saying this is what we're inviting you into. It is still inviting people into a life that matters. What is the underlying thing behind that? Purpose, a life that matters, a purposeful life. And so this is how our messaging is founded upon and based upon. And that allows us to create a narrative around that. Everything we do is saying, is this going to help create more purpose and matter in someone's life? Is this matterful? And then we are able to, that word gets used in design sometimes. And so
is this matterful?
I recognize that as a made-up word that I am familiar with and others are. But if you've never heard that before and it sounded like Matterhorn, I apologize. So that's the kind of basis for creating narrative and creating messaging. And perhaps there's no other place, especially in the world of digital, that's more important than the main headline on your website. In web design, we call what you see, the first thing that you see when you land on a website, we call that above the fold. The fold meaning what's below once you start scrolling. Above that scroll section, the thing that consumes your entire screen. Because there's this rule on the web that says if you don't convince someone to use and stay on your website, within the first 10 seconds, they're going to likely leave. And so you've got this above the fold section. Most people aren't going to scroll. You've got this most important real estate on your website. How are you going to maximize it? And so if you put something like, love God, love people, serve the world. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything to the person that's landing on the site. They're looking for you to convince them and prove to them that your organization, your church in this instance, is worth their time and worth their next 30, 60, 90, 120 seconds scrolling on your website. And it all starts with this main headline. And so you want to anchor it in either hope, purpose, or community. Now, to take Owen's question a step further, he's asking a very interesting question when it comes to marketing and product market fit. Because the market, in this case, has a problem. The problem is, in his region, as he has diagnosed it, a need for community, a lack of community. That is the problem, a lack of community. His product, in this case, and these can be crass terms when it comes to a church, but we're just using basic marketing lingo. You can insert any synonymous word that you feel more comfortable with that means the same thing. But we're talking product and market. Market lacks community. The product is offering purpose. And so when you look at that as kind of just objectively, you would say, there might be a bad fit here because what you are offering, self-diagnosed, is maybe not what the community is looking for. Again, diagnosed by you. With that being said, there's a reason that I recommend purpose, hope, and community as the three main anchors for your headline and for all of your messaging because they're universal needs that we all have. Whether you think your community needs community or purpose more, look, the answer is that they need both. With that being said, what you don't want to do is start taking one, two, all three of these and combining them together. This is a classic church mistake that everyone listening, you can apply this immediately to what you're doing. Churches will always be compelled to add more rather than subtract more. And to be fair, this isn't a church thing. This is something that we all do, right? I just need one more book on dieting, and then I'll finally be able to take care of myself. I just need one more chance at X, Y, or Z, and then I'll finally figure it out, right? Rather than diagnosing what we're already doing and saying, hey, maybe if I went to Taco Bell less, Brady, you wouldn't need another diet book, okay? You don't need some fad thing. Eat less Gordita Crunches. It's simple. But the compulsion is to add more and add more and add more. In communication, churches do this by having a bulletin, an app, a website, another website, a welcome desk, connect cards, giving cards, announcements, video announcements, social media announcements, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, and they haven't posted on Facebook in 35 days, right? That's what we do. We just keep adding communication channels because it removes any responsibility on our part. Hey, that's the church's fault that they're not following us there because we've got all the channels that they could ever need. But that is the wrong approach. It's much better as a leader to make a choice, choose, consolidate, subtract, rather than continue to add. And so in the same way, you've got three different options for the anchor of your messaging: hope, purpose, community. Choose one. You want to choose community because you think that that's the best option for what your market is looking for? Great. The downside of that is going to be that if your church is terrible at community, you're not going to be able to serve, you're not going to be able to live up to the hype that you're claiming, right? You cannot walk the walk. You can only talk the talk. On the flip side, if you go with what you're already good at, that being purpose, maybe people won't resonate with that as much. And so I don't think there's a clear answer here, Owen, and that might not be what you're looking for. I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you choose one and go all in on that one. Because I think both are universal needs. The reason that I recommend all churches focus on one of the three, hope, community, and purpose, is because every church can respond to one of those three things, if not all of them. And every community is looking for all three. I'm looking for more community, but I'm also looking for more hope and more purpose. I'm up for all of it. There's rarely a person that's like, I am so filled with hope, it is nauseating. Oh, please, get that hope out of here. A New Hope? Star Wars? Not today. The amount of purpose in my life is horrific. I am terrified of more purpose. If I had any more purpose, I'd be over-purposed.
Over-purpose.
Right? So these aren't things, right? So anyone that you focus on is going to be fine. There are pros and cons to both, but I think a lot of them, those pros and cons, those are based upon the variables of you self-diagnosing both your product and your market. And you could be wrong about those. I imagine you're not, but that's possible. And the clear answer here, Owen, listen, everyone listen. There is no wrong choice between hope, community, and purpose. The only thing that you can do incorrectly is say, under the guise of compromise, well, we'll just have a little hope and a little community, and we'll mix it together. The problem is that, again, when you start adding and adding and adding, things become more complicated. You as a church aren't able to focus. We talk all the time about the dynamics of working at a church. It's tough. We have limited resources, limited skills. We're wearing 80 different hats, and most of the time, especially when it comes to communication, and that's why shows like this exist, we don't know what we're doing. We were just thrust into this role because we also work with students, and now we're in charge of this. So what you don't want to do is try to master 18 different things. Focus on one. Dive deep into one. Go deep before you go wide. We talk all the time about that in terms of social media. It applies here as well. Choose one. Hope, community, or purpose. Dive deep. Stay within your lane. The lane that you choose. I know it's tough to make a choice, right? Because you think, what if I make the wrong choice? What if I have to change in the future? The point is to choose one and just stick with it.
Cool. All right, question 2.
I literally say 8 billion words and you go, cool.
All right. I don't know what you want from me. All right, so this question 2 comes from DoopyPlant20 on Instagram.
DoopyPlant20?
I'm reading an Instagram handle. I don't know what it is.
Wow, Roxanne.
So they asked.
It's not legal here yet.
Hey, Brady, I have a question. When I go about making a graphic for my church, I have the bad habit of looking at bigger churches like Hillsong and Elevation Worship to see what they are doing. I know you said that we shouldn't do that as designers, so I have tried to get away from that and create my new style. I don't know if this is a dumb question, but what's the best way to find your style? Or better yet, how can I find out what people like to see without copying ideas from other churches?
Awesome. So what Doopy style _10,000 is getting at is the difference between copying a church's strategy and copying their tactics. Okay? And so I recommend a lot of the times that you shouldn't just look at what Elevation is doing and then say, if Elevation has an app, we should have an app, right? That's kind of like copying their tactic and then trying to say, if it works for them, it'll work for us. And the problem with when you do that is that you completely ignore the entire journey that church or organization has gone on before that. I like to use the metaphor of the basketball player, Steph Curry. So Steph Curry, one of the best basketball players right now, one of like the top 5 players in the entire world, 2-time MVP. Steph, he's a small dude, comparatively at least in basketball. 6'2", 180 pounds. And yet he's one of the most dominant players in basketball because he can shoot from basically anywhere. He's lethal at shooting. And if you just look at the way Steph Curry plays basketball and think to yourself, hey, I'm short, I can do that too. You completely neglect the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of basketball that Steph Curry has played, practicing that shot day in, day out. You can't just do what he does and think that it's going to work for you. Mm-hmm. One of our team members, Tristan, had a great story about this. He joined the volleyball team in the 8th grade at his school because no one else would join. And it was one of those things where he went to a smaller school. They wanted to have a volleyball team, but they needed one more person. And so they convinced Tristan to do it. So Tristan would look at the way other players were using their hands to bump in volleyball, also known as a dig if you're using a more professional term.
Fancy.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's when you hold your arms out kind of in a V in front of you, and then when the ball is spiked or hit hard, you kind of prop it up. And Tristan would look at the way that other players on the team were holding their hands, and he'd be like, I'm holding my hands in the exact same way, but when I hit the ball, I can't control it. It will just go like in a completely unexpected or unanticipated direction. When they dig the ball, they can control it and hit it where they want it to go. I think I'm doing the exact same thing. Why am I getting different results? And Tristan was brand new to volleyball. And so what he wasn't recognizing was that at the last second, his teammates were bending their knees and just really making their arms very flexible and kind of like floppy so that they could absorb the power of the ball being spiked and then direct it. He was holding his arms extremely tight and with no flexibility whatsoever. And so he wasn't able to control it because the ball would just hit his arms as if it was hitting the floor and just kind of bounce in a random direction. And so to his eyes, it looked like he was doing the exact same thing. But to a more experienced volleyball player, they could tell what he was doing wrong. And this is the problem. When you look at a tactic that another church is employing, copy it verbatim, identically, and think that it will produce similar results. There's a reason why Elevation Church's app is so successful. Because they have millions of downloads of Pastor Stephen's contents, especially his sermons, most importantly, because he is an international sensation, both in the Christian world and in the church world, when it comes to the messages that he speaks. An app makes sense. We produce a new piece of content every single day, Monday through Friday. Hundreds and hundreds of posts, podcasts, and videos. We do not have an app.
No, we do not.
40,000 churches on our email list. We don't have an app. If anyone needed an app, it could be us. And we don't have one.
No.
Because it just isn't a fit for our audience, nor do I think it's a great fit for most audiences. I think there are better ways to do it. The point is, you can't look at a tactic and copy a tactic and expect to get similar results. What you can do is look at a foundational strategy and then copy that. Those are the two levels of copy that I often talk about, tactics and strategies. Now, there's one level above that this question is actually getting to, that I've never talked about before. And I actually don't have a name for it, but you can basically just call it like personal preference. You can call it design, style, decor. I'll come up with a nice name for it. I'll come up with a nice name for it in the future. But the reason I'm saying decor is this. What this person's getting at is the difference between stylistic preferences. So Roxanne and I, we are both living in places of living. We both have homes that we live in. The way that Roxanne decorates her living room might be the way that is not the same as the way I decorate my living room.
It definitely is not.
And yet, our homes are built almost foundationally in identical ways. They've got studs 12 inches apart. They've got drywall that is mudded well. They've got, this shows how little I know about structural integrity of buildings. You know, there are floors that are something, ceilings that are 8 to 10 feet tall, door jambs that are this much wide, baseboard across the bottom of every, that's all the same. The structural, foundational strategy is the same. And then Roxanne and I are given our own volition when it comes to actually decorating. Where do I want to position the couch? Mm-hmm. What side of the living room will the TV go on? Will I have a TV at all? What about plants? Real or fake? What color should I paint the walls? Maybe wallpaper's coming back in. Not yet. Slow down, And this is what this individual question is getting at. It's okay to copy the gradient design trend that Elevation is using, because that's just a decor thing. It has nothing to do with the actual strategy. It's okay to copy the way the text is positioned in the bottom right corner of an image that you really like. It's okay to copy the exact framing of the way that someone has taken a picture of Pastor Stephen mid-message. It's okay to copy any of these stylistic, design preference, decor type things because they have no impact, or at least extremely marginal impact, on the actual communication strategy. So to go back to our app example, I wouldn't recommend creating a mobile app for your church just because Elevation has one. But if you love Elevation Church's app and you love that their navigation menu is arranged in such a way at the top of the screen, you could copy that because that's just a design preference. And you know what? Like, there's no black and white between these kind of three levels of strategy. The foundational, the tactics, and like the personal preference at the top. Like maybe the navigation bar at the top, that is design, but it's also a little bit into tactics because it has to do with like where they think the navigation is best for their menu. It should be up top, not to the side, right? There's not necessarily a clear breakdown between each of these. And you also don't want to just copy someone's design 100%. We had that happen to us about a week ago.
True.
Something was released and the design copy was identical. And we were like, hey, I actually messaged the guy. I was like, hey, maybe you could have done something a little different. Not 100% copy. He was very remorseful and said, I screwed this up and I'll fix it. And so you don't want to copy something identically. But if you look at Elevation Worship and you love the way that they position, like I said, their text in the bottom right corner, or you love the way that they, make their logo into a black and white silhouette and then they watermark it on the bottom left corner. Or if you love the way the framing is of, like I said, Pastor Stephen mid-message, that is something that you could copy. This is something that I have done again and again when it comes to film. I self-taught myself when it came to learning how to create videos. And what I would do is every time that I was watching a movie, watching a show, wherever it might be, that I saw a specific scene that I really liked, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was the framing. Maybe it was the focal length, the lens of choice. Whatever it was, I would take a screenshot of what I was seeing. So if it was on my phone, grab a screenshot. If I was watching on an actual TV, I'd take my phone out, open up the camera, and take a picture right then and there. And then I would look what is it about this image that I like? What is it about this image that made me stop and actually take a picture because it resonated with me so deeply? And then I try to reverse engineer what it was. Maybe it was the lighting, maybe it was the frame, maybe it was the focal length of the lens. And then I would try and experiment with that the next time that I was behind the camera. That was me looking at a personal preference of a cinematographer and then replicating what I liked. And that's the only way to find your own style, to really copy what others are doing stylistically, and then find out what you like and remix it all into something that's your own. There's this great series, and we can link this up in the YouTube description, the Facebook description, a series of videos called Everything is a Remix. And it kind of documents how creativity, basically nothing is new, and everything is just a blend of a couple of other things, right? You take this thing, you blend them all together and you get something new. But really, it's not new, it's a remix. And everything is a remix. To quote some Canadian content, the Bare Naked Ladies, they have a song called It's All Been Done. And the whole song is look, we're not creating anything new. Every song is just a rip-off of 8 other songs put together into a new song. And so that's what creativity really is. And so when it comes stylistically, it's great to look at what others are doing and really experiment with that. What you don't want to do is copy the same tactics of someone else. So for instance, a tactic would be a quote post. Because Elevation always does quotes of their pastor, that doesn't mean that necessarily you should do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't evaluate it. And I think that a quote post, for instance, is something that a lot of churches will benefit from, and I talk about it and promote it. But that would be a tactic where you got to look at that and be like, does our pastor preach in such a way that a quotable little nugget of wisdom, is that something that he or she ever kind of stumbles upon? Or do they not preach in that way? Because if they don't preach in that way, there would be no point in trying that type of tactic, right? And that's where you have to evaluate what others are doing and what you could try doing. So that's my long way of saying that there are 3 levels to, strategy. It's okay to copy the top one, experiment with it, remix with it. Don't necessarily copy the middle one just blindly because, like I said, what someone does that works for them might not work for you. Because what you're going to do is ignore the whole journey that it took for them to get there. And then there's the bottom, the foundational stuff. And ideally, those things apply universally to everyone, but they're not as obvious, right? It's not like it's an app. It's a whole communication theory and strategy that's kind of a lot bigger and deeper, wider, stronger, faster.
Canadians telling it the way it is. All right. Question 3 comes from Josh Vassar. And he says, do you think it's okay to mention giving in announcement videos? It can be quite a touchy subject. Any ideas for wording it?
So I think giving in announcement videos is perfectly reasonable. I think that at our church, we do it not in video form. We have our host live in person on stage responding to these types of things because it is a little bit more personal. And the way that we structure announcements, we kind of have a lot of different things transitioning. So I come out on stage as the music ends. I welcome new visitors. I transition into giving. Then we transition into an announcement or two. And then we transition into the message. And so there's a lot of moving pieces there, and I'm kind of navigating all of them in real time. But if you want to put it into your videos, great. At the end of the day, I don't see there's a huge difference between putting giving into video versus putting it into live. The problem with giving announcements is that they rarely use story to promote giving. Yeah, they use scripture, they use guilt, they use shame, they use the same repeated verses over and over again, hey, be a cheerful giver. Hey,
I'm smiling.
Not only do I want
I'm
you to
obviously
give,
being
but
cheerful.
you better smile through gritted teeth. I don't even care. Give cheerfully. Now, churches aren't usually that malicious or that kind of stern when they do announcements. But the point is that the best way to promote giving when it comes to announcements is to use story. Talk about how other people are being generous. Talk about a story about how when someone gave, it resulted in real life change. Talk about when someone gave, what it allowed one of the ministries to do that it wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And when you can tie giving, which is a sensitive topic, which is infringing upon people's money, which is already like the biggest reason for divorce, I've heard Dave Ramsey say, is money. So money is a very sensitive topic outside of the church. Then you bring it into the church and you want people to give it to you. The best way to do it is to inspire through story. What story does that no other type of communication does is it releases oxytocin, which is the chemical within our brains that promotes empathy towards one another. And when we have empathy towards one another, we are more likely to give our money. And they did an actual study on this where they showed someone a story or they told someone a story of this person in need. And they were just doing this study and they were actually paying the people to be at the study, as studies normally do. And at the end of the story, they were like, how do you want to respond to this? And a ton of people were like, oh, I want to give money to help this person out. Unprompted, all because they were moved by the chemical of oxytocin going through their brains that was driving empathy that led to them giving of their money, which is a sensitive topic even outside the church. And obviously, when you look at it this way, you can see how story can be used to manipulate people. And this is something that you do need to be cognizant of, that when you're using story, something that is so powerful, it is easy to manipulate people to get what you want. And as long as you're doing it in an honorable way, you don't have to use the word manipulate. You could use the word persuade. You could use the word compel. You could use the word drive to action. It's all the same thing, right? Some of those words have different stigmas attached than others do. But at the end of the day, story is the only thing that's going to drive something so touchy and sensitive as giving. Whether you do it through video, whether you do it through live, doesn't matter. Pair giving with a story, and you'll see much, much better returns.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it helps answer why we give too, in a better way than just being because the Bible says so. I don't know.
Well, yeah, when you think about when you go to events, and organizations like Compassion and World Vision are great at this, right? And they've become so great at it that we almost put our guard up now, especially if you're in the Christian world. You see Compassion coming to the stage, you're like, no, they're going to tell me a sad story. Resist, right?
Yeah.
Which is a completely unusual thing that would not happen in your church. But the reason that organizations like Compassion are so great is they don't go up and say, hey, be a cheerful giver. Hey, God says to serve the needy and to care for the orphans and widows. How dare you go against God's word? How dare you? How dare you not care for the orphans? You're sick. You're a sick group of individuals. I wish I wasn't even invited to come up on this stage. No, what they do is they share a story of an orphan or someone who's impoverished, a child, obviously, and they're just like, this is someone in need. And there's 1,000 other kids like this. And if you're able to help, we'd love for you to help. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I want to help because you've been driven by empathy, which was triggered by story. Got him.
Truth.
For a good cause.
All right. The last question comes from Grace Life Church. And they say, I recently started a podcast and was able to easily set it up because of Brady's podcast, the best podcasting advice for churches. I know y'all use Libsyn for hosting, but I've been using SoundCloud. I'm having second thoughts. Do you still recommend Libsyn? If not, what do you recommend using for podcast hosting?
Yeah, so we still use Libsyn to host the Pro Church podcast. If you're listening to the Ask Brady Show, episode number 23 in the podcast, you are being served this audio file via Libsyn. So we host all of our audio files on Libsyn, which is a short form for Liberated Syndicate, I believe, or syndication, something like that. And what we do is we use that to host all of our podcast files online. So they're not hosted on our website. So if you download the file and incur a bandwidth cost, that gets applied to our Libsyn monthly plan. And they have plans as low as $5 per month. And it all has to do with how much storage that you're uploading each month. So it doesn't have to do with how many downloads you get. If you get 1 download or 1 million, the cost is the same. It all has to do with how much audio content you're uploading each month. And so our plan has increased the more podcasts that we've published each and every week, thus each and every month. We love Libsyn because it provides good analytics. It creates a great RSS feed that we can send to iTunes, which is how we trigger an actual podcast feed inside of your podcast app of choice. And although they're kind of like an old school company when it comes to their UI, kind of looks like it hasn't been updated in a little while, their analytics are reliable. They are great at, at support. They're great at putting together like cost affordable plans. The reason we went with them when we first started was because we were a much smaller company and a $5 per month plan sounded very affordable. We also, though, host our podcast on SoundCloud as well. SoundCloud's a bit different. It will also generate an RSS feed for you, but unlike Libsyn, which is a private behind the scenes company, when you post on SoundCloud, it's public and everyone can see it. Again, you can also generate an RSS feed that you can send to iTunes. The analytics aren't as good on SoundCloud as far as I've seen. And, I will say the SoundCloud player is very nice, and you can embed it, but you get a little bit of that SoundCloud branding, and I believe the cost is $15 per month. So I'm still an advocate of Libsyn, but we syndicate also on SoundCloud separately because we want to be in as many platforms as possible. But we didn't do that for the longest time.
No.
How long have we been on SoundCloud?
Only a couple months, I think. I think it was this spring.
And the reason is because we were just like, for the people that listen on SoundCloud, hey, we'd love to be there and make it easy for them. So I would still recommend Libsyn. I think it's cheaper, a more robust platform. Though, with that being said, and this is the final thing I'll say on this, it does seem like as podcasts continue to grow and become more popular, there's going to be another platform that comes along and disrupts it because, like I said, Libsyn does feel like a little bit old school, a little bit throwback. They do what they're doing well, but I wouldn't say they're necessarily innovating. iTunes recently came out and said for the first time they're going to begin releasing stats on podcasts, which is something that they've never done. And so we'll be able to know, like you would with a YouTube video, how long did someone listen to this podcast? How many people listened all the way through? What portions of the podcast are people skipping? And as podcast advertising revenue becomes more and more important, analytics like that also become important. Like, if we can tell that 90% of your audience skips through this part of the podcast where our ad is, we know that it's not serving as much people as we thought it was. And so there's plenty of developments. I still think Libsyn is the best option.
That's really cool that iTunes is doing that.
Oh yeah,
That's
I can't wait.
Exciting.
It's about time because, we've known that with videos for so long. We can look at our YouTube analytics for the video version of Ask Brady, and we can see how long people watch through on average, where the spikes were, where the dips were, and that allows us to kind of look at what we're doing and respond appropriately. With podcasts, you're just flying blind.
All right.
So thanks, iTunes. With that being said, thanks for watching through another episode of Ask Brady, the Ask Brady Show episode number 23. If you want your question answered, you can always hashtag Ask Brady on Instagram and Twitter. In the comments below, hashtag Ask Brady on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching. We publish a new episode every single Friday. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. Give it a thumbs up. Hey, give it a thumbs up. Hey. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.